Hello everyone, welcome to Start Your Dungeons. I'm Adam.
I'm Rob.
And I'm Bryce.
And today we're talking about Heart, the City Beneath. And Bryce, why don't you start us off with that?
So, Heart, the City Beneath is by, and I gotta remember how to say exactly, is it Rook, Deckard, and Pawn? Company who also makes Spire and a few other games now that come out, Honey Heist being one of their other ones, but Heart is the first one I've ever tried by them. It is really hard to describe in some ways. It is a dark fantasy, horror-esque kind of gameplay set in like an Underdark sort of setting with mythical creatures and magic and technology. It's a lot. To put it on the back of the thing, it says, a red wet haven slumbering fitful under the city of Spire. So,
Love it.
It is creepy, weird, but it is excellent. I mean, this is one of my personal favorites. So,
What do you think about the quality of the art, the layout, paper? Rob, why don't you comment?
So this is an art book, right? That's the best way to put it. It's got a very consistent, incredibly evocative style.
Yeah.
It's got
It almost looks like a comic book. Like the
Yes.
art style is very comic
Right.
book, very
So you can kinda
flat
see
panel.
stuff in there. It's got nice glossy pages. Normally, I don't, like the sort of wearable, non-glossy covers on the outside, but I think for something like this, it wears really nice on the shelf.
yeah.
Like you can kind of see it's getting some
My
age
copy
to
is
it.
beat up. Yeah.
But I think that fits with the game and the tone that they're trying to set. I mean,
Yeah.
This is a beautiful book. It was wonderful to read, even if you don't get a chance to play it that often.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best things I liked about it was flipping through the book originally. I mean, I had this book for like 2 or 3 months before we played it, and I was looking through it nonstop all the time just because I loved the art. I think some of the character class art is some of my favorite. The Junk Mage, I think,
Junk
is
Mage.
what you played as your actual class is really, really well done. Yeah, that's the Deadwalker. Again, just very provocative of this theme because you're not playing like fighters and things like that. You're playing like cleavers who are like berserker kind of characters who care about eating people's hearts to gain power. So it's all this very like dark and twisted sort of artwork that really bleeds into that whole book.
Yeah, and to kind of go back to saying, Spire, you mentioned their previous game. Spire looks like a game that was sort of ripped from a comic book. It's fine for what it is.
Yeah.
This is a book that I found myself taking off the shelf just to look through and get ideas. Months after we had played it. It's beautiful and it's great to look at.
I think, yeah, it's got a lot in it for, we'll talk about it later, but definitely the setting kind of stuff in the back of the book is really good for any sort of game system.
How easy is it to get into the game? Like the, just like approachability for this game.
The system itself is super easy. So the system itself, it's a D10 based system.
Dice pool.
Yeah, like building a dice pool. Depending on how difficult, you might remove some from it after you roll them. And the goal is basically to roll 8s or higher. 10s being critical successes in this. It is a really interesting system, I think, in that there's no real like hit points in this game. It's about how much stress you take on different factors. Similar in some ways, I would say, to if you read watched our review for Candle Obscura, how you have the different things that eventually lead to you gaining scars and things. Very similar system to that, and depending on how you take damage, determines like what ends up happening to you. So like you could take physical damage, emotional damage, mental damage. Your supplies can take damage, which I think is a really cool idea. So I think it's a pretty easy system to get into. So I DM'd it for us. You guys were players. As players, how did it feel when I handed you a character sheet and you guys because you guys all built your characters, What did you think?
It was intuitive and gameplay mechanics never slowed down the story, which is the best endorsement I can give to any sort of indie game mechanic system out there.
Yeah. I will say that the system, I would kind of back that up and say, the system never gets in the way of the game.
Right.
And, we never slowed down. It was just you get thrown in and constant tension. which is good for that kind of flavor.
I think for DMing it, the only something that I actually frequently forget when I was DMing it was remembering that I can make you remove dice by making things difficult. So I was like, oh, you rolled a bunch of dice, and I'd be like, oh crud, I forgot you were supposed to take 2 of those away. Like you actually failed. Like that was the only thing. The monsters in the back of this book are really, really cool, but I actually think that you can build your own pretty easily. But they're very nice to have settings in the world, and then monsters that you can kind of face, and then also a big in-depth about the world itself, because Heart itself is like built on this massive city underground, and then you go to the first, the second, third, and sequentially to the Heart. But the world is ever changing, and that happened in our campaign because we went through a couple of missions. You would go down a hallway and go, oh, we went down this way before, and go, this biome is completely different because of the chaos magic that's kind of circulating this whole area. And that's a really cool thing, and leads itself, I think, if you're a really creative DM who wants to kind of get into the weeds, it provides a ton for you to not need that. But if you wanted to do that, there's just a boatload of stuff to help you get there in the long run.
Yeah, it adds to that hex crawl thing where you're trying to get it from point A to point B, and you build your map as you go, like in Forbidden Lands and whatnot. With Heart, you're not guaranteed that any session that you come back that still is the case. And I think that's a really novel way to play an exploration-based game.
And shout out to them, they actually sell a map pack, a physical copy that you can buy that has like a hex crawl map that you can add stickers to and things. It's really nice. Really they have one at the store.
Stickers.
Yeah, like I keep forgetting to get it when I go to the store, but I think that's a really cool thing that kind of helps you visualize your world in some ways.
Is there anything that you don't like about the system?
No, personally, I don't think there's anything I dislike. I think the only thing I would say that I think was difficult at first was figuring out how to give you things, because the way that they build like equipment and supplies is they're degrading sort of things, and they count to certain types of saying like this is a D8 worth of technology bits, and so when you come to these certain spaces, you can be like, well, I can hand off a D8 of technology bits to get a D6 of food, and I think that is a little bit difficult to understand. But that's something that just they say free reign, do what you want with it. I don't think there's anything that I ever went like, ooh, this is kind of irritating, because I kind of just read the rules and ran with it. I mean, I built entirely custom things for us to run through, and I think I never felt like I was sitting there going, I don't know this rule and I'm not sure. I was always like, I don't know. If I don't know 100% if there's an actual ruling on this, the system will make an opportunity for me to play it, and that's great for me, because I think a lot of these newer systems that I've been reading recently for us to review cover everything, and sometimes it's like, man, this is really a pain in the butt almost to kind of remember all this, but also go, oh, I gotta go to page 257 to find this one thing, because it's one kind of scenario, and I don't think that happens with this. What about y'all as like players? Did you ever feel like there was something you didn't like about it?
I don't know about didn't like, but I think you're dead on with the items. Trying to get used to the dice system of maintaining items.
Right.
I just didn't understand at first, but
and you can use them for checks and things. I think that's what they kind of do. Is they're like, this is giving you an additional item's worth. And like they rank up in items, so the higher the die value, the better the item is in quality. And I think in some ways it's for trading, but in some ways it was like you can also use these in the environment and things. Rob, what did you think? Is there anything you disliked?
No, not at all. Not at all. Just on the item bit, I think it's a tweak on that thing that's in vogue with like indie games, where instead of tracking inventory, you count down based on a die roll. So D4 arrows, you roll a 1, then you lose a die or whatever. But again, it's a little counterintuitive until you kind of see it in play.
Right.
Yep.
That in no way distracted from the larger game for me. I thought it was just about perfect. The only risk that I would see is that tone-wise, if you're talking about something that has sort of elements of body horror, Clive Barkery, weird, erotic, potential, squishiness, that tone is difficult to maintain at the table.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with the system or the content. It has to do with the players. Yeah. So that's just going to be your own challenge.
And I'll bring that up now because we usually talk about who's this book for. I will say if you are not a fan of like the darker sort of horror, you might want to skip. In this case, our last game we ran, I did a whole secret cult with like a child born with this goat head prophet, creepy child demon thing, like world full of blood and like bones. Very much a dark set. And I actually think it worked for the small. We did it over like 3 or 4 nights. It worked, but it would have definitely overstayed its welcome.
Yeah.
I think what's nice is they do give you a bunch of different options to do different things. So you can do, like one of the ones that I want to run is this idea of there's this railway that exists that kind of teleports through dimensions that you get on and you're stuck on hopping between dimensions and different areas of the heart. There's kind of, you can do simple things like just, there's a wizard's tower, but add a darkness to it. But I do agree that this book is not, nobody's happy. Like everybody is suffering in this area. Like you're not in heart. And that's something I think that's really interesting that they do for character building is you're in heart not for a good reason. You're in heart because the heart talks to you in your dreams. Your cult kicked you out. You're a criminal. You want to find adventure because you can't survive in the spire. Like there's nothing that's like, I came down here because flower picking's amazing. Yeah. Like, none of that sort of vibe in here.
So we usually ask the question, can you play this game indefinitely? But, your opinions sound like maybe you should break this up. Maybe do shorter mini campaigns and then come back.
I will also say this, the game will push your characters to a resolution of them being done. So every character eventually gets to a set point to where they have these things called beats. And as you complete small beats, you get to major beats in your path and then your opus path, which kind of helps determine and get your character to a final point of saying, my character's eventually going to do something so incredible in the heart that it changes the landscape forever. And then they're dead.
Yeah.
Or they disappear. So while I do agree with
part of the landscape, they become a message passed indefinitely between sentient robotic bees. I love games with a death spiral so much.
Yeah.
The problem I think with some of those things is that it's hard to finesse with games like Call of Cthulhu that takes a great keeper.
Right.
Great player investment.
Yeah.
Games that just kill you very quickly, like Morkborg Mothership, Pirate Borg, maybe to an extent.
Yeah.
That's more of a survive until you can't story. The thing that Heart builds in is that resolution. So I think that's perfectly metered out. And again, I think it's set for, you've got your backstop, it's set for a shorter campaign, but that campaign is going to give you a lot of bang for your buck.
Right. And you can do like we did where it was go on a mission, come back, wait a little bit, go on a mission, come back to it. And I think that's where this game shines is if you want to take a while and play something else, kind of like we did, and then come back to it with characters, you can. Or you can build new ones. It definitely... I don't want to say you can't play this long term. I think you definitely can. Your just characters might not live as long.
Just switch out new characters.
Right.
Try new builds.
Exactly. And they're absolutely on that because all the classes in here are so cool. Yeah. Like you said, there's one where you're literally a body of bees. Yeah. Like, why would you not want to play that?
So for new players versus seasoned players, just to recap, probably seasoned players who know pacing.
I'd argue you can give this to new players. My reason for it is the character sheet is not stupid complicated.
Okay. And
I also think that the dice system is way easier to understand than a lot of others. My argument is new players, absolutely. New DM, maybe not.
Yeah.
But if you're new to role-playing and you want something that fits that zone between it's like if you wanted D&D, Monster of the Week, and Call of Cthulhu to have a baby, this is your book. And I think that if you're looking for that specific thing, this is the best thing on the market right now to kind of give you that vibe and still have like a fantasy kind of setting. Because I like that about it, actually, that it feels still like fantasy. It's dark, but it's like, I feel it's like this character is basically a fighter, but it's their version of a fighter, their version of a wizard kind of thing.
You don't get to pick PCs that don't have inherent flaws.
Yeah.
Right.
And for that reason, I would argue, I would, personally as a DM or a game master or whatnot, I would be a little bit more worried about teaching this to diehard grognards or OSR people because of how they are. I mean, let's face it, like this is a story that's going to focus on story beats, on interesting interactions and scenes. It's not focused on how much stuff can you accumulate and how many experience points can you bring to a build. And so I think there would be a barrier there to maybe seasoned, stuck-in-their-ways players that might make me a little bit wary of running that for them.
I feel like this game is what would happen if the book and blog series Save the Cat had been taken over by an eldritch horror. It was like, here's some D10s.
Yeah,
It's got big Clive Barker vibes. It's got big, darker Neil Gaiman, Caitlin Kiernan, maybe Perdido Street Station type stuff.
Yeah. And I will say what's nice about it too, because we always talk about it too, is this is the book. This is all you need to run it. The only thing that exists actually is little like zines and PDFs that add a little bit of extra. They're not campaigns. They're, I think, like more like little setting booklets and things.
Yeah.
So really, and this, I want to say this was $40, maybe $50. I actually don't remember. It's been so long since we picked it up. But like for one whole book to give you endless play, and I think also really good for if you want to run one-shots and things with your like local store, if you're looking for something that maybe your players like that D&D vibe, but they want something a little bit darker, and you're not a Call of Cthulhu person, I mean, this fits a bill because it's definitely a little bit different, but it's still got, I think, enough vibe to where a D&D player would kind of understand where it's coming from in some cases.
Yeah, if you're not pulling out a bang-up, like, talk about it a year later story out of a game from that, the way that it's intended to be played and the way that it's written, then that's a you problem. That's not
yeah.
It's a phenomenal
Literally, when I was in Denver a week ago, I saw a statue with a person with a goat's head, and I sent it to them, and I went, "Hey, it's the thing you killed in the Heart campaign." Like, that campaign to me is like, I mean, not toot my own horn, but like that was pinnacle, amazing idea that like came from me, just kind of thinking through a storyline and doing it, and like, yeah, it's like you said, if you're not running something amazing out of this, you're not doing it right. Because the stories you will make in the world this is set in is going to breathe great ideas from itself.
So I think we're all in agreement. Pick it up.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. If you've played it or you have any questions about it and want to talk about it down in the comments, just leave them down below. So, bye, everybody. Thanks.
Take care.